At 1:47 in the morning, the camera goes dark, and inside an 84-year-old woman's chest, a small electronic device does something that no camera, no witness, and no neighbor could ever do. It starts recording her heart, beating faster, then irregular. And what that device logged, time-stamped, and stored in those final 41 minutes is the most disturbing evidence in this entire case. Tonight we are going inside the pacemaker data. Not the surface version you have seen on other channels. The real version. The FBI case file version. The version that explains exactly what happened to Nancy Guthrie between 1:47 and 2:28 inches the morning of February 1st, 2026. And by the end of this video, you are going to understand why the FBI's findings are not just disturbing because of what they do not know. They are disturbing because of what they do. Stay with me, because this is the most important video we have done on this case. Before we go any further, subscribe right now and turn on every notification. This case is moving faster than anyone predicted, and you cannot afford to miss a single update. Before we get into the data, I want to take a moment to talk about Nancy, because this story gets so technical so fast that it is easy to forget who we are actually talking about. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She is the mother of Savannah Guthrie, the longtime anchor of NBC's Today Show. She is the mother of Annie Guthrie, who lives in Tucson. Nancy is not a public figure. She never wanted to be. She was a woman who raised her children largely on her own. A woman who loved her garden, who attended church every Sunday, who spent quiet evenings on her porch in the Catalina foothills neighborhood of Tucson, Arizona. She had a pacemaker, a small implanted cardiac device that helped regulate her heart rhythm. She had dinner with Annie on the evening of January 31st, 2026. Annie's husband, Tommaso, drove her home. She went inside. And at 1:47 inches the morning, everything changed. Nancy Guthrie has been missing for over 90 days. She is still out there somewhere. And the device inside her chest recorded every second of what happened to her that night. Most people think of a pacemaker as a heart regulator, something that sends electrical pulses to keep a heart beating in rhythm. And it does that. But that is only half of what modern pacemakers do. The other half is what makes this case so significant. Modern implanted cardiac devices are data recorders. Every heartbeat logged. Every arrhythmia logged with a timestamp. Every time the heart rate spikes above normal, logged. Every time it drops below normal, logged. Every significant physiological change the body goes through, logged. And beyond cardiac data, many modern devices contain accelerometers, sensors that detect physical movement, sensors that can tell the difference between someone walking voluntarily and someone being carried. Nancy's pacemaker had all of this. It also had something else. It was connected to a home monitoring base unit in her bedroom, a device plugged into the wall that transmitted her cardiac data to the manufacturer's secure cloud platform at regular intervals. Not once a day. Regularly. Continuously. That cloud data is what the FBI subpoenaed in the first week of February. The manufacturer complied. And what the FBI's forensic cardiac specialists found inside that cloud data is what this entire video is about. I want to walk through this case the way the FBI walked through it. Not as a news story. As a case file. Because when you see the 5 evidence points laid out in order, the picture that forms is impossible to look away from. Evidence point 1. 1:47 a.m. The doorbell camera at Nancy's front door captured a masked figure approaching the property. Dressed in all black. Slim and athletic build. 5'10" to 6'2". Carrying 2 bags. Wearing gloves. At 1:47 inches the morning, that figure disabled the camera. The footage went dark. That is the last external visual record of anything at that property. Evidence point 2. At the exact same moment the camera went dark, Nancy's pacemaker logged a sudden and dramatic spike in heart rate. This was not a gradual increase. It was acute. Sudden. Forensic cardiologists who have reviewed this type of pattern describe it clearly. It is the cardiac response of a conscious person who is suddenly and severely frightened. The spike at 1:47 and the camera going dark at 1:47 are not a coincidence. Nancy's heart confirmed what the camera captured. Something happened at that moment. Something that terrified her. Evidence point 3. The full digital forensics log. 1 hours 46 minutes and 58 seconds a.m. Front door sensor detects motion. 1 hours 47 minutes and 2 seconds a.m. Doorbell camera begins recording. 1 hours 47 minutes and 15 seconds a.m. Unknown male appears on camera. 1 hours 47 minutes and 18 seconds a.m. Pacemaker logs a significant cardiac event. Heart rate spikes. Rhythm becomes irregular. 1 hours 47 minutes and 20 seconds. A.M. An unusual sound event is flagged from inside the residence. 1 hours 47 minutes and 50 seconds. A.M. Suspect leaves camera frame. Camera is disabled. 2:28 a.m. Pacemaker sync with home monitoring unit stops. That is a 41-minute window. 41 minutes of complete external darkness. No camera, no phone, no GPS. But the pacemaker recorded every second of it. Evidence point 4. Physical evidence recovered. 2 bags, gloves, items consistent with someone who came prepared, not a spontaneous intrusion. A planned one. Evidence point 5. The location. 5830 North Jenner Drive, Catalina Foothills, Tucson, Arizona. A residential neighborhood, quiet streets, low overnight traffic. The kind of location where someone can arrive and leave at 1:47 inches the morning without being seen. That is the case file. Now let us go inside those 41 minutes. Phase 1. Nancy was awake. The cardiac spike at 1:47 tells investigators something absolutely critical. Nancy was not asleep when this began. A person taken from deep sleep does not produce this type of acute physiological response at the exact moment a threat appears outside their door. Nancy's heart rate spiked sharply. Suddenly, at the precise moment, the masked figure disabled the camera. She was awake. She was conscious. And she knew something was wrong. That detail matters enormously, because it means Nancy experienced the beginning of this. She was aware, and her pacemaker recorded that awareness in the form of a cardiac response that no one can fake after the fact. Her own heart confirmed she was there. She was conscious. And she was terrified. Phase 2. Sustained fear. Here is where the data gets more disturbing. The heart rate spike at 1:47 does not come back down. In a normal startle response, if someone hears a loud noise or sees something unexpected, the heart rate spikes and then returns to baseline within a few minutes. That is not what happened here. Nancy's heart rate stayed elevated for minutes. The rhythm shows irregularities that forensic cardiologists associate with extreme emotional distress, not a clinical emergency, but not calm, not safe. The sustained elevation tells investigators one thing clearly. Whatever triggered that spike at 1:47 did not go away. It continued. It persisted. This is not a woman who heard a noise, looked around, found nothing, and went back to sleep. This is a woman who was in the presence of a threat that did not leave. Phase 3. She was being moved. Approximately 15 to 20 minutes into the 41-minute window, the data changes again. And this is the finding that investigators have been most careful about discussing publicly. Nancy's pacemaker contained an accelerometer. When a person is walking, moving under their own power, the accelerometer records a specific movement pattern. Rhythmic, voluntary, self-directed. When a person is being carried, when their body is being moved by someone else, the pattern is different. It is passive. The movement is not self-generated. The accelerometer data from this phase of the 41-minute window shows passive movement. Not Nancy walking through her house. Not Nancy moving to a different room. Nancy being transported, being carried, moved by someone else. And the duration and character of that movement, the rhythm of it, the sustained nature of it, is consistent with one thing: being placed in a vehicle and driven away. Phase 4. The most disturbing finding. In the final 10 to 15 minutes before the sync stops at 2:28, the data shows something that the FBI's forensic cardiac team has described as the most clinically significant finding in the entire analysis. The heart rate, which had been elevated throughout most of the 41-minute window, begins to change in a specific way. The natural beat-to-beat variation that a conscious person's heart shows, what cardiologists call heart rate variability, begins to decrease significantly. Decreased heart rate variability in this context has a specific clinical meaning. It is the pattern a heart shows when the central nervous system's normal regulatory influence on cardiac function is being suppressed. When consciousness is being altered. When someone has been administered a substance that is affecting their awareness. The clinical language for what the pacemaker data shows in those final minutes is pharmacological sedation. A drug-induced alteration of consciousness. Someone gave Nancy Guthrie a sedative. Possibly injected, possibly administered by inhalation. But something was given to an 4-year-old woman in those final minutes before her pacemaker lost contact with the world. Let that sit for a moment, because this is not a random detail. This changes the entire profile of whoever did this. You do not accidentally have medical-grade sedatives on your person. You plan for them, you acquire them, you bring them with intent. The sedation finding tells investigators 3 things. First, this was premeditated. not a crime of opportunity, not a spontaneous break-in. Someone planned this carefully enough to obtain a controlled substance and bring it to Nancy's home. Second, whoever did this had access. Medical-grade sedating compounds that produce this type of rapid-onset cardiac signature are not available at any pharmacy. They require a procurement trail, a prescription history, a hospital or clinical connection, or a black market source that itself leaves a trail. Third, the FBI knows exactly what to look for. The specific cardiac signature of the sedation pattern visible in the data narrows the range of compounds that could have produced it. And narrowing the compound narrows the list of people who could have obtained it. The FBI is following that procurement trail right now. At 2:28 inches the morning, the sync between Nancy's pacemaker and her home monitoring unit stops. That is the last data point in the cloud record. And for weeks, that timestamp was misreported, misunderstood, and misused. Multiple news outlets reported that Nancy's pacemaker stopped at 2:28. That is not what happened. The sync stopped. The wireless connection between the pacemaker and the home monitoring unit was broken. The most likely explanation, based on the accelerometer data showing vehicle movement, is that Nancy was in a vehicle that had driven far enough from her home that the monitoring unit could no longer reach the pacemaker signal. Either way, the pacemaker itself did not stop. Nancy's heart did not stop. The data at 2:28 shows a sedated but functioning heart. Not cardiac arrest. Not death. Nancy Guthrie was almost certainly alive at 2:28 inches the morning of February 1st. On April 6th, day 65 of this investigation, someone sent 2 notes to TMZ. The first note claimed Nancy was dead. The second note, sent on the same morning from the same person, claimed they had seen her alive in Sonora, Mexico. 2 notes. Same sender. Same morning. Contradicting each other completely. Retired FBI agents called the notes fraudulent immediately. But here is what makes those notes even less credible. The pacemaker data at 2:28 does not show cardiac arrest. It does not show the device entering a post-mortem non-pacing mode. It shows a functioning, sedated, but beating heart at the last moment of recorded data. Whoever wrote that TMZ note claiming Nancy was dead was not working from knowledge of the pacemaker data. They were guessing. And their guess contradicts the most medically rigorous evidence in this entire investigation. Now, here is something that most channels have not connected to the pacemaker story. In mid-April 2026, investigators announced that DNA evidence from Nancy's home had been sent to the FBI's lab at Quantico, Virginia. Specifically, a rootless hair sample and biological material from a bedsheet clipping. Rootless hair is notoriously difficult to analyze using traditional DNA methods. But the FBI partnered with Astrea Forensics, a California-based lab that specializes in low copy number DNA and touch DNA analysis. And a forensic genealogist named C.C. Moore, one of the most respected genetic genealogy experts in the country, is involved in the analysis. C.C. Moore has personally cracked cases that sat cold for decades using nothing more than degraded biological material. The combination of Astrea Forensics technology and C.C. Moore's methodology means that even if the hair sample has degraded, even if it is partial, there is a real possibility of extracting a DNA profile. And if that profile connects to someone in a public genealogy database, investigators could identify a biological relative of whoever left that hair in Nancy's home. That is not a theory. That is how genetic genealogy works. And it has produced convictions. Now let us talk about the part of this story that does not get enough attention. The DNA routing confusion. Early in the investigation, the Pima County Sheriff's Office sent a DNA sample to a lab in Florida. Not to Quantico. Not to the FBI's specialized forensic units. To a state-level lab in Florida. When a reporter asked the Pima County Sheriff directly about this on live television, he said the DNA went to Florida. The FBI had said it went to Quantico. 2 different answers, 2 different labs, 2 different stories. That contradiction surfaced publicly and caused serious questions about the coordination between local and federal investigators. In a case like this, where time is critical, where an 4-year-old woman is missing, that kind of miscommunication costs time. Time that Nancy Guthrie does not have. The DNA eventually reached Quantico, but the path it took to get there was a mistake that investigators will have to account for. On May 6, 2026, the CW special, The Nancy Guthrie Mystery, brought 3 of the most credentialed experts in American criminal investigation together in front of a camera. Dr. Ann Burgess, the criminal profiler who inspired the Netflix series Mindhunter, someone who has worked with the FBI for decades. Dr. Gary Brucato, forensic psychologist, Boston College, co-author of Research on Targeted Violence. Dr. Casey Jordan, criminologist and behavioral analyst. All 3 of them said the same thing. Porch guy may already be dead, eliminated by the person who hired him, the person they called the boss. Think about what that means in the context of the pacemaker data. Porch guy came in the front. He disabled the camera. He entered the home. He was part of the operation. But he was not running it. Someone gave him instructions. Someone planned the timing. Someone knew about the camera system. Someone obtained the sedatives. Someone had a vehicle waiting. That person, the boss, is the architect of this crime. And if the boss has already eliminated Porch guy to prevent identification, it tells us something critical about their psychology. They are not panicking. They are managing. They are making calculated decisions to protect themselves even after the abduction. That is the profile of someone who planned every contingency in advance. There is one more piece of this story that almost never gets a full explanation. The Bluetooth detection effort. The FBI deployed signal detection devices around the Tucson area within the first days of the investigation, designed to detect the specific Bluetooth signal that Nancy's pacemaker emits. Nancy's pacemaker, like most modern cardiac devices, broadcasts a low-power Bluetooth signal when it is near a compatible monitoring unit or clinical programmer. The range is short, approximately 15 to 30 feet, under ideal conditions. Which means to detect that signal, investigators need to be in the right geographic area and within that short range of Nancy's body. But the accelerometer data from the pacemaker gave investigators a constraint. The vehicle movement data suggests that at the moment the sync stopped at 2:28, Nancy had been traveling for approximately 15 to 20 minutes. 15 to 20 minutes of highway travel south of Tucson places a vehicle anywhere from 12 to 25 miles from her home. That geographic radius became the primary search zone for the Bluetooth detection effort. When you overlay that radius on a map, the highway corridor heading south toward Rio Rico and the Mexican border falls directly within it. That is not a coincidence. And investigators know it. I want to be honest about the limits of this evidence, because this case deserves honesty more than it deserves sensationalism. The pacemaker data establishes what happened to Nancy between 1:47 and 2:28 inches the morning. It does not tell us where she is now. The internal device logs, the data recorded after 2:28, are still inside Nancy, still inside a device implanted in her chest. And those logs can only be accessed when she is found. The pacemaker does not have GPS. It cannot transmit a location. And 90-plus days have passed since that last data point at 2:28. But here is what the data does tell us. At the moment the sync stopped, Nancy's heart was beating. Her pacemaker was functioning. The sedation pattern is the pattern of a living person. Not cardiac arrest, not death. Nancy Guthrie was alive at 2:28 inches the morning of February 1st. And until evidence conclusively proves otherwise, that is where investigators are working from. The clock inside her chest. There is something I keep coming back to in this case. That pacemaker inside Nancy's chest has been running continuously since the night she disappeared. Every day, every hour, every minute. It has been logging, timestamping, recording. It cannot transmit that data anymore. The home monitoring unit it's synced with is sitting in an empty bedroom in Tucson. But the internal memory of that device holds a complete physiological diary of everything Nancy has experienced since 2:28 on February 1st. Every stressful moment, every calm one, every time her heart rate spiked with fear, every time it settled into something resembling rest. The whole truth of those 90-plus days is stored inside a device the size of a small matchbox. Inside an 4-year-old woman who deserves to be home. The FBI found a disturbing pattern in the data they could access. But the full story, the complete truth, is still inside Nancy. And the only way to read it is to find her. The DNA at Quantico is being processed right now through probabilistic genotyping and genetic genealogy. C.C. Moore and Estrella Forensics do not fail quietly. When they find something, it matters. The Bluetooth detection sweeps are continuing in the 12 to 25-mile radius south of the Catalina foothills. The procurement trail for the sedating compound identified in the pacemaker's cardiac signature is an active investigative thread. And the identity of the boss, the person who planned this, who obtained the sedatives, who had a vehicle waiting, who may have already eliminated Porch Guy, is the central target of the entire federal investigation. FBI Director Kash Patel used the word nefarious. He said if they find nefarious conduct or conspiracy, they will make the appropriate arrests. The FBI does not use that word unless they already have reason to believe it applies. The pacemaker data gave them the timeline. The DNA at Quantico may give them the name. And Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, a woman who raised her children alone, who tended her garden, who had dinner with her daughter and went home, is still out there. Her heart is still beating, and the device inside her chest is still keeping count. If you have any information about the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, come forward right now. FBI tip line 1800CALL FBI. Online. tips.fbi.gov. Pima County Sheriff, 520-351-4900. The reward is $1.2 million, completely anonymous, no name required. Because somewhere tonight, an 84-year-old woman is waiting for someone who cares enough to find her. Nancy Guthrie is not a headline. She is a mother, a grandmother, a woman of faith and routine and Friday night dinners with the people she loved. She trusted the people around her, and that trust was used against her. This case is not cold, it is not over. Her heart is still beating, and the FBI is still listening. Subscribe, turn on every notification, because when this case breaks, you need to be here.